morning, everyone. We just continue business as usual, as hopefully more people will come. I heard that Sunday is a very tricky day to guarantee attendance from people, especially from local people, because it's, you know, the day where normally we rest, but we start anyway. Before we get into the presentation, and because we are a small group of people today, I'd like to introduce you to myself. I'm Anna Mori from the United Nations in Geneva. We work for the International Trade Center, which is a joint agency of the United Nations and the World Trade Organization. And the ITC basically is an organization that tries to bridge trade and development. So just to repeat again, we are 50% United Nations, 50% World Trade Organization. We are based in Geneva, in Switzerland, and we have operations in more than 100 countries. Now, I would like you to introduce yourselves, starting with the sir to my right. Where are you, sir? What's your name, and where do you work?
My name is
Of Zimbabwe. We have many projects in Zimbabwe as well. Nice to meet you. SheTrades, exactly, with SheTrades. SheTrades works with our colleagues of the trade and support institutions, and Chapaz and other ladies as well, to strengthen their management skills, business management skills. And you, sir, what's your name?
Yes, my name is also from
I didn't get? Okay. Very nice to meet you, also from Zimbabwe. Awesome. And we have our colleague from UNWTO. From Madrid. Okay. It would be nice, because then I think half of our meeting will be covered here with the presentation, so we are saving time. Kriti. We have a lady at the back that was here from the very beginning. Okay, very nice to meet you. Ima? Okay. Here, representing China. Okay. Ingrid.
Well, I am Ingrid from Mexico. That is CEO of Unity International. It's an agency for international countries, and I'm very familiar with the current.
Okay, so here in the room we have representatives of businesses from Mexico, China, and Zimbabwe, right? So if you want to talk later, why not? Now to start, we work for ITC based in Geneva, and right there we have a special initiative called SheTrades. And you might be thinking, okay, I know of the UN system, of the UN family, I know UNCTAD, I know UN Women, I know UN Global Compact, but why ITC, and why ITC works to empower women entrepreneurs? We have been running in this business in terms of helping small SMEs for a long time. SMEs, I mean small businesses, to internationalize and so on for a long, long time, and I'll tell you more about it. But we realized back in 2010 that we needed to have a special program for women. And why? Because we realized that out of all these SMEs that are working across the globe, only 1% of the SMEs that are led or managed by women are getting access to export financing in the world. So, Ingrid, 1% of women-led business, they have access to export financing, right, which is an issue. We also realized that the United Nations said that women need to have equal access to opportunity, to education, etc., so it's part of the SDGs. We know that small businesses across the globe, and many in the African continent and Southeast Asia, they account for 60% of global employment. So, you know, it's not the large companies that are really creating jobs and employing people across the globe. actually the small businesses are doing so. And out of the small businesses, 30% of them are led or managed by women. So what we also realize is that exporting companies, they tend to be bigger, they tend to employ more people, they tend to have higher revenues, and meaning that they're more profitable. However, less than 5% of the world's top exporters are companies that are owned by women. So 50% across the 50% of the world's population is women, right? But of the top exporting companies that are really profitable, less than 5% are companies that are owned or led by women. And of course, the issues that they face are different. And we did a bit of research to realize the situation, to check the situation here in the MENA region and the UAE region. And we realized that UAE is quite different from MENA, but we wanted to cover both for you. Do you know, could you tell me, what do you think is the top barrier for women-owned and women-led business to grow their companies? What is the top problem that they have? We've done access to finance. What else? Access to training. Good. And you nailed 100%. And the reason why we are here having the panel tomorrow with Visa, with Khalifa Fund, and many others. So we'll be in a panel tomorrow talking about that. So in the world, when we serve in our ITC service with the WTO, etc., we realize that for men-owned businesses, the top one barrier is access to markets. They complain about not having access to buyers, etc., but for women in the world, it's access to finance, so we are right. When it comes to the MENA region, it's the same, access to finance. But when we talk about UAE, the barrier is different. Would you know which one is? Interesting. They complain about two things. They complain a lot about access to markets, but they also complain about the fact that they do not know how to bid, to compete in tenders, both from public sector and private sector. So quite different. In the MENA region, what we also realize is that only 20% of women are actually working in the whole MENA region. The reality is different for UAE, of course, but MENA we consider North Africa, etc. as well. 21% of exporting firms are owned or managed by women, and actually only in the whole MENA region, 10% of the total of companies, firms, enterprises are owned and led by women. That's why we are here, and that's why we have projects in the region as well. We already talked about key problems that we face here, lots to do with collaterals, lots to do with issues in terms of owning lands and assets as well, lots to do with the lack of confidence to go in and talk to banks to get a loan, for example. Women tend much more to use family savings to run their businesses because they are asked for collaterals and so on. But also because they don't get to participate in formal networks. Look at us today here, right? I know it's a Sunday, people might be not working today, unfortunately, but it's a good opportunity, right? And women tend to participate less in these formal networks, business networks, and that's why Ingrid's job is so important, our job is so important, because we provide with access to markets, access to buyers, information on trade trends and destinations and so on. Okay, the International Trade Center, as I told you, what we try to do is to support the small businesses to have the right capacity to grow. So we provide training and information on how to create and how to have the best packaging, most profitable packaging, how to get a right international certification if you want to access, if there's a company in Rwanda, how we can ensure that this company understands the trade agreements that will support their business to grow cross-border, the European trade agreement with some of the African countries, right? So this is our bread and butter. We support them with capacity building and all topics. We have experts in different floors that cover coffee sector, that will cover services, IT, and so on. And after that, when they are more capable, we connect them to investors in markets as well, as Ingrid knows very well. And within ITC, we have the SheTrades initiative. Why? Because since 2010, we are funded by governments, right? We are funded by the UK government, Korean government, Norway, Sweden, name it. Many countries that think that gender equality through trade is a good thing to do. So the SheTrades initiative realized back then that there's a lot of buzz about this gender equality topic. Governments that never spoke about gender equality before, they were adding this topic to the national export strategy. We had many companies coming to us, Google back then, IBM, Microsoft, telling us, it's wonderful, we do have supply diversity programs, so we want to source from more companies that are led or owned by women, but we don't know where they are. And when we find them, the quality of their products and services are not up to the standards of what we want. So that's why we decided to create the SheTrades initiative to work together with partners. And this is our current footprint. We have on-site projects and hubs in these countries. So with projects, what I mean is we sit down with the government of UK, for example, and we select 6 countries, especially under the Commonwealth network, where we are going to really understand the gender gaps in specific value chains in these countries. And over a period of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, what we do is really to work with smallholder farmers, cooperatives that are led by women, women entrepreneurs to build their capabilities to trade better, nationally, internationally. And then we work also with the government. So we sit down with ministries of trade, with foreign affairs, with chambers of commerce to see what can we do together in order to, bring more delegations of women-led businesses to international trade fairs. How we can make sure that investors understand the need of women-led business. And this we do in many of these countries. So we get funding from developed countries that have commercial interests or development interests in some of these other geographies. But on the other hand, we also have countries like Brazil, or Philippines, or even UAE that come to us saying that, Anna, we don't need funding. We already have a robust government, but we just need to deploy a women in trade program. How do we do? And this is our hub's approach. Okay, so I just went through that. So we have projects, as I mentioned. We have hubs, which basically are run by national host institutions. So that would be a Ministry of Trade or an export promotion agency. On the first level of project, we received funding from governments. We set up a project, and after that, we have our results to match. And our goal is to support women entrepreneurs so they create more jobs, increase their income, and like this, reduce poverty on the ground. With hubs, we have our national hosts, our chambers of commerce, that deploy and roll out the program for us. And the third are the partnerships. So these are some of the projects that we have right now. We have SheTrades in Latin America, covering many countries. We have a project in West Africa covering Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea, and other countries. We have SheTrades in Vietnam. We are starting a new phase of our project in Morocco. We have a new phase of our project in Egypt. We are discussing, and that is a very good one, I think, especially from our colleagues from Zimbabwe. There's the new AFCFTA, right? And we work together with the Secretariat of the African Union to roll out all the gender directives within the AFCFTA. So there, in that project, we have a network of 100 women's business associations, and together with them, we're making sure that their voices are heard in these new policies that are creating training, etc. And our next step right now would be to capacitate these women business associations to help women entrepreneurs in different value chains to do trade. So that is a very important one, I would say. Another thing that we are launching this year, we realized that across the globe, governments are the biggest buyers, right? They buy chairs, they buy IT services, they buy, name it, and they spend about $13 trillion per year in purchasing goods and services. But less than 3-4% of this amount goes to the hands of women-led business. So that's why we are launching together with the government of Germany and others this project to promote gender-responsive public procurement. There will be a big campaign that we'll be launching at the WTO with key ambassadors and ministers as well of trade and of ministries of economies to make them understand what is the reality of women-led business. They tend to be smaller. They tend to be less profitable. They have problems in accessing and understanding the information on public tenders and so on. So what we'll be doing is to launch a global campaign. I think pretty much everyone will be hearing about. And in the past, we are talking with the UAE government as well, with Dubai Exports and Investments. They wanted to connect with the Ministry of Economy to ensure that there are different ways on how we can work on that with policies. So making sure that there's a target of, within the Ministry of Economy of sourcing from women-led, women-owned business. But, for example, if a government has a contract of $1 million for a potential supplier of computers, a women-led business company is very unlikely to be able to basically bid for the tender and produce those products. So what we could do, is to break this 1 million contract into 4 of 250,000, which will be much more interesting for these smaller businesses. We have partnerships, and that's why, and we are bringing some of them tomorrow. These are we have more than 250 different partners from public and private sector. And what we do, we sit down with each one of them to understand how together we can collaborate to support women entrepreneurs. For example, with UPS, we work with their foundation in Vietnam, in Nigeria, in Mexico as well, in Indonesia, and we are open up for other countries. What UPS does, they provide training on logistics and exports, but they also are providing 40% discount in some countries for shipping. So this is very good, especially for small businesses. If they get 40% discounts to ship their products, amazing, right? So this is what we are doing in some countries. Seedly, which is on the second box, and Kriti and I, we love to say this because people, they relate better. Seedly is a law firm, very famous. I think it's the top 3, 4 of the world. It's where Michelle Obama met Barack Obama when Barack Obama was an intern, and basically what they're doing with us, they have a pro bono program to support small businesses. So every year we select 30 companies from any country, could be Zimbabwe, Zambia, Vietnam, etc., and we have their top legal advisors supporting these businesses with pro bono. When it comes to Alibaba, Mercado Libre, these are big e-commerce platforms. We do a lot with them in terms of supporting small businesses to go digital, first of all, to make sure that they are very attractive online, and sometimes we even get their fees waived, their annual fees for small businesses, we get these fees waived as well. We work with DHL and many others. With Unilever is quite an interesting partnership, because I think I mentioned in the beginning that many of these big buyers, they came to us saying that they did not know where this women-led business were and how they could engage them on their supply diversity program. So Unilever, and I think you know them very well, they have a strong supply diversity program, but they came to us and they told us that, especially in Asia and Indonesia, Pakistan, and I think that the third country is Philippines, and they told us, we have very ambitious targets there. We want to source from women-led business, but we do not find them. So right now, we are working with them in providing 2 women-led companies training on access to finance, sustainability, but also we have Unilever's procurement officers, so literally the buyers of Unilever, that are developing and delivering together with us training on how can you become a supplier of a Unilever? What are the certifications that you need? What are the key quality standards that you should try to get before becoming a supplier? And right now, the work that we are doing is literally selecting about 300 women-led suppliers. We introduce them to Unilever buyers, and the next step will be to generate some business for them. So this is one of the examples of what we do on the partnerships. This is our network of 13 hubs that I told you. We want to expand here in MENA as well. What we have achieved, so as we told you, we are United Nations and WTO joint agency. We have 250 partners in different countries. We supported a network of over 100,000 women-led business, and I would say that at least 50% of them are in the African continent. We facilitated $382 million in trade and investments for women since 2016. And we have our global tools. Working for the United Nations, you know, of course, our tools are public goods, so there's no cost to that. And what we try to do with SheTrades.com is to provide a place for women entrepreneurs, especially those that cannot run their websites by themselves, for example, because, you know, it costs money for you to have an IT person maintaining and getting, you know, the products and information up to speed. So women-led business, they can place their products, information on their companies on this website. They can also, what we realize is that, you know, after workshops, women entrepreneurs would tell us, Anna, we are tired of these online courses. Nobody has time. We run 2 businesses, we have 3 kids, we need to take care of our families, etc. So don't come with us with long trainings of 2 weeks, etc., that we will not follow. So what we decided to do is to create a tailored academy for women-led business, which has more than 150 courses, and it will be on how to improve your coffee production, to how to create your export strategy based on the needs of the markets, right? So this academy is quite interesting. I'll speak about it in a minute. We also put all information on next events, networking events, B2B meetings, trade fairs, etc., that any woman across the globe can participate, and you can filter per country to see what's happening for your networks. In terms of the academy, I think the cherry on the cake of our tools is what we call the self-assessment tool. Because you know, many of us, business support organizations, chambers of commerce, etc., we tend to deliver what we know. So if I'm working on business strategy, I would deliver training on that. If I know about, you know, packaging, we will deliver training on that. But we realized that businesses were wasting time. So we put together this self-assessment tool, which is a big name, but it's not scary at all. So businesses, small businesses, women-led business, they can go online and they will reply to a very thorough survey which covers 18 areas of competitiveness. So by the end of this survey, each business will receive a tailored report that will tell your weak points and your strong points. For example, it will tell whether you're doing very well with financial management of your business, or if you're not doing so well in terms of e-commerce and putting your business online. So this tool provides each business with, you know, the key areas where you're scoring high and the areas where you're not scoring high, along with suggested courses for this specific business to take. So like this, they will not waste time. And Kriti will go through these areas of competitiveness later. This tool will be rolling out in many different countries, especially under the AFCFTA, the self-assessment tool, so businesses can really understand better how they are doing, right? And then once they do the self-assessment, then they come to the SheTrades Academy. I'm in love with this academy, to be very honest. You have many options. You have a 1-hour course, which is very sweet. You can take and use your phone before going to bed, for example, if I want to learn more about, I don't know, defining better my marketing strategy, for example. And it's gamified. There are videos, there are short audios, etc. And after that, you get linked to other peers that are also taking the same course, and you have a tutor to answer your question. So it's we spend quite a bit of time in making sure that this is tailored to small businesses. And we have more than 100 topics covered as well. So it's a community of practice. I think we heard about the different crises we are going through. Someone would like to name the different crises we have been going through? You name it. Huh? You're depressing me so much, so many. Yeah, like post-COVID, right? War, like, right? Climate, definitely, all of that. And I think this crisis, they pushed us to think forward and to improve our game in terms of how to assess which risks my businesses are going through, right? Or how to make sure that I'm not only resilient to crisis shocks, doesn't matter what type, if it's like health, etc. But what would be my plan? What should be my plan if a crisis hit my business? Because during COVID, and Kriti will remember that, during COVID came like February, March 2020. And I remember the business saying, like, we are shutting down. We just received funding, but we are shutting down, especially the smallest ones, etc. And it was because we had those very strong collaborations with partners that we were able to make businesses understand which will be the market trends. We also were able to guide them on not getting new orders from buyers because probably inputs will be difficult. So instead of facilitating more business connections, we are trying to work with investors to facilitate finance to cushion that gap in terms of businesses. And we created all these different toolkits for crisis management, resilience, risk assessment, and all of this is available for free, and you can access the QR code. Okay, my colleague from UNW2 and many of you said that the top one barrier for women to grow their business is access to finance, and you're right. And we know that women face a gap of 300 billion capital. And according to my notes, I think the MENA region has the largest gap in terms of access to finance, especially because of collateral issues as well, ownership and lack of confidence to go to banks and apply for a bank loan and so on. And because also the requirements, people talk a lot about impact investing and nowadays, but we really need to dig deeper to understand what does impact investment mean, right? Are the interest rates like really much better than commercial banks? So I think this is also the reason why we are here in these investment meetings, is to be able to engage with these financiers. So ITC, International Trade Center of the United Nations, Trade Center, our mandate had nothing to do with finance, with investment, nothing to do. But since we are working with women entrepreneurs and their problem number one is access to finance, little by little we saw networks of partners becoming financiers, right? And we realized that on one side we had a network of 40 financiers, be it impact investors, funds, grants, guarantee banks, development banks, etc. And on the other hand, we had this network of women-led business that really needed finance. So we just 1 + 1 is 2. So let's create an initiative for that. And this, in the middle, is where we are. We are bridging the gap between capital providers, especially impact investors, with our networks of women entrepreneurs. Through our SheTrades Invest tool, and we do this online and offline, we have put together a tool where we are inviting our networks of women-led business to register. It's a long, I would say, profile creation. We need to understand what is the type of financial instrument, what type of money they need, how much money they need, and to do what, and how impactful that the money that this financier will be giving will be for them to grow their business. And what we try to assess as well is if they know the type of money that they need, if it makes sense for them to get debt, equity, grants, etc. Because there is an issue also in terms of understanding. We want money, but what type of money? It will make sense for me to have equity. Most women don't like equity. They would prefer debt because they wouldn't like to rely on an external partner to make decisions for their company. So this is our tool. We have right now 40 capital providers. Mainly, most of them are interested in Latin American-based companies and African-based companies. We are trying to enlarge our network of financiers for the MENA region as well, especially the Gulf region. Working with Visa, and Visa will be here tomorrow. So with Visa, we want to really enhance our presence in the Gulf region. So I told you about finance, resources, all publications about women in trade. We are a very well-known initiative internationally in terms of gender and trade. We are the ones that are really supporting and advising the WTO on trade regulations that take into account gender equality as well. We Every year we publish more than 6 publications on the topic. And as I was telling you, we have our tool, which SheTrades Outlook, which is basically created and rolled out in more than 40 countries right now. This is for policymakers, ministries of trade, ministries of investment. The tool shows, and it compares, not country to country, but it compares how the country is doing in the country's region. For example, we check how the country is doing in terms of adding gender equality into their trade policy. How is the business environment for women in that specific country? What are the programs available for women in terms of capacity building in the country? How is the legal and regulatory framework? According to a World Bank assessment, more than 90% of the countries surveyed, they had an impediment in the law that hinders women's participation in trade. So we assess these 6 areas across 83 different indicators, and 80% of this data on trade and gender is new. So this is very important for the AFCFTA right now. We are working together with them. And then when you go through the tool, you can say, how is Zimbabwe doing compared to the region of, regional area, South Africa, Zambia, etc. It will not put you against the country, but put you against the average of the region. So this is a very important informative tool for policymakers at all ministries in different countries. A little calendar of events. All right, so we wished we had more women-led business for this moment, because what we wanted to do is to provide a bit of overview on improve your competitiveness. Kriti, I'll invite you to do that. I think we don't need to go that deep into content, but definitely some key areas of competitiveness to boost your business. And we'll be happy to meet you, especially tomorrow. We have a panel. That will be UPS. That will be the CEO of Khalifa Fund for small businesses and women. That will be also Masdar City as a panelist. Visa coming as panelist. I'll be moderating that. So I know tomorrow is the big day, so please come and let's talk about business and women and finance. Thank you so much, and over to you, Kriti.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. I see some new people that have joined us, so welcome to this workshop, Power Up Your Business. My name is Kriti Sharma, and I'm working with the International Trade Center, which, as Anna mentioned, is a joint agency of United Nations and World Trade Organization, and we work for the SheTrades initiative, which has a goal of unlocking the economic opportunities and the economic autonomy of women to integrate them in global value chains. So today, as Anna mentioned, we spoke about our business model, we spoke about all our tools and offerings, which of course not only support women, but are also useful resources for SMEs to boost their competitiveness. So we hear this word a lot, right, in global trade and investment, but what does it actually mean? So let's define that first. So in 2015, ITC launched its report, the Competitiveness Outlook, which provided a definition for what competitiveness actually means. And it includes 4 statements, so let's just go through each one of them. Number 1, the firm should demonstrate the ability to design, produce, and commercialize an offer, right? So you need to have a product, and you need to make sure it's commercial. And you need to also make sure that it fully and continuously fulfills the needs of a targeted market segment. So there is a requirement for this product, and that's why you're fulfilling it. And that's why this product is commercial. How do you do that? While connecting with and drawing resources from the business environment, but also making sure that you are getting a sustainable return to these resources, right? So you have a product, you commercialize that, you fill the market need, you draw resources, and you also ensure a return. So these are the 4 statements for how to be more competitive, how to become more competitive as SMEs. Now, how do we get there, right? What do we need to actually, now that we have the definition, how do we actually reach the stage of competitiveness? So under the SheTrades approach, we defined 4 competencies and 19 capabilities that comprise the whole competitiveness map. As Anna mentioned, we have the self-assessment tool. So if you're any SME, any women entrepreneur, you can go to this tool. You can, share your strengths and weaknesses on different indicators, so across these 19 pillars. And the tool will tell you that, hey, you're great in marketing, you have the knowledge of, say, exporting, but you need to work more on logistics, or you need to understand, how to get finance. So these are different competences and capabilities, and we'll walk through four of these. Number one, so say we are an SME, we're producing mangoes since it's warm and it's one of our favorite fruits. What do we need, right? Number one, we need to actually understand the business opportunities that exist, and we need to create pathways to actually access those opportunities, right? So this comes under strategic competence. So this includes building your strategy, coming up with a structure, and also making sure you're constantly innovating and you're setting up an infrastructure arrangement. Now, so this SME producing mangoes, we have a strategy, but how do we actually get to markets? So that comes under the marketing and sales competence. This means all the operations that go under market transactions. So how to identify orders, how to secure deals, how to actually close contracts, right? But also establishing an identity for your business. How will you communicate with clients? How will you deliver your products? So all of that comes under marketing and sales competence. So communication, distribution, and securing and closing these sales contracts. So you have the strategy, you have the marketing and sales competence. Now, let's talk about production. You need to actually produce this product, right? So that comes under the third competence, which is production. So this means, how do you actually produce and ship this product? Do you have the costs in place? Are you meeting the quality standards? Do you know the quantity of what you're going to produce? So all of that comes under the production competence. And last but not the least, a very, very important competence is the resources. What do you need to actually produce this? Starting with IT, knowledge, human resources, finance, non-physical assets, networks, relationships, customers. So all of these resources come under the fourth competence, which is the resource one. So I really encourage all of you to please go to the website, SheTrades.com, do an assessment for your business, and for all the institutions that are here, share this tool with your network so that they can understand how do they actually score under each of these competences, and they know the gaps and the areas that they need more work on. So for most SMEs, now that we have a basic understanding of competence, the ultimate goal for most SMEs is actually exporting. To make sure that the product that you're delivering has a global demand and is actually able to get returns on that. What is exporting? I think we know that already. It's basically selling products or services across a country's national borders, and in return, you get paid in either money, products, or services, which are also from outside your borders. But unfortunately, SMEs face a lot of challenges when it comes to exporting. Maybe someone here would like to share one, any challenge that comes to your mind? As a small and medium enterprise, what do you think are some challenges faced by SMEs? Sorry? Logistics. Logistics tend to be very costly for SMEs, that's correct. Any other challenge? Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges for SMEs, and especially for women-owned SMEs, they have a huge financing gap, so it gets exacerbated. What else? Yes, please. Absolutely. So this also, the policies, the regulatory environment, which also perhaps comes under information. SMEs don't know the information, they don't know markets, they don't know where to export their products, right? Some other challenges that come under are, not able to find the right human resources. Yes, please. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Very, absolutely true, sir. And knowledge, and also another point you touched upon is the support system, right? So having that networks and associations that can give you that knowledge. So we have information, we have lack of support systems, business networks, financing, logistics, many other challenges. But something, that kind of brings them together is the knowledge gap, right? So the first thing that SMEs need to do, they need to gain the knowledge that they need to begin their exporting journey. And today we're going to talk about 4 key pillars that you need to take care of before you start building your export strategy. So let's go to the first one. Now let's go back to the original example. We have an SME producing mangoes, right? So when you think of a mango, what's the first thing you think of? Anyone? It's a mango. Like, think of a mango, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? It's yellow, so mango. Yes. Yeah. So it's mango, right? So it's yellow, it tastes sweet, it smells amazing, right? It's a fruit. It has, now some people don't know, it actually has over 20 minerals and vitamins. It fills over 60% of your vitamin C intake per day. So all of these qualities are the first things that come to your mind, right? So these come under physical characteristics. So we need to know all these things about your product because you can't sell something that you don't know yourself. So the size, the color, what is the texture? How does mango feel like, when you touch it? What does it taste like? What is the nutrition value? So all of these are the first pillar, pillar under knowing your product, physical characteristics. What next? It's also important to know import regulations. So, almost all countries require different documentation. They have some standards that we need to comply with. So it's very important to know as an SME who's producing mango, what are the different regulations, documentation needed, and making sure that you have mapped that out. So that comes under knowing your product as well. And last but not the least, certifications. Why are certifications so important? Because they're very important to, firstly, demonstrate to the country that you're complying with a certain standard that's been set by them in terms of safety, in terms of health and quality. It also helps to build the trust with consumers. It shows that perhaps you're committed to preserving the environment, you are making safe use of pesticides. So all of these are good qualities for the consumer to know. So it ensures compliance with country requirements and builds trust and credibility with the consumers who are actually buying your products. So a quick recap, under knowing your product, we need to make sure we know the physical characteristics of the product. We make sure what certifications we have, what voluntary and mandatory standards the product is complying with, and the import regulations that apply to your product, right? So now that we have an understanding of our product, what is the next thing that we need to do? We also know about your company. So we know about our product. Now let's start, of course, as an SME, you know about your company, but there's a tool that we recommend that's very important in terms of taking strategic business decisions and also thinking about exporting. So it's a SWOT analysis, a very structured method which means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the strengths and weaknesses are usually related to internal origin. So these are mainly about your company, your product, other features. But the opportunities and threats are more external. So these are, this tool is very important, while you're considering a new project, a new venture. And let's take an example. So we go back to our SME producing mango. I'll stick to that example for the whole workshop. So this SME is now considering to start exporting to UAE. So, now that, this opportunity has come up, this SME is trying to create a SWOT analysis and filling each of these pillars. So what are the strengths? The SME thinks it's growing, it's small, but it's growing, and it's offering competitive prices. That's good. In terms of weaknesses, again, they don't have a lot of knowledge of this market. They don't have the right negotiation skills. They are only local, so they don't have a lot of experience in international markets. So it's good that they're aware of their strengths and weaknesses. What are the opportunities? There's growing interest for mango in this market. That's great. The buyers have already showed their interest. They're looking for flexibility in terms of deliveries, which is offered by this company. And the local government is also providing support to their sector. So these are external, right, in terms of interest, policy support, buyer interactions, which are working in their favor. So these pose as good opportunities that the business should consider. And what are the threats? Of course, very important to consider in terms of international markets, the exchange rate. So it's very volatile. We know the economic market is precarious, so that is important for the business to consider. And accordingly, plan risk mitigation measures, right? What can it do to save itself from this volatility? There is, the inputs that go into production of mango are very high costs, so that is a threat. And so the SME needs to consider other suppliers, perhaps, right, who can provide these inputs and these resources for a lower cost. And perhaps there is lack of political peace and stability in the region. So this figure helps the company understand that, okay, there are opportunities and these are the threats. And if the organization is able to have a measure for each of these threats, perhaps they will go through with this export. They will start working towards it. But in case the SME decides that, okay, I think the exchange rate is too volatile, I'll end up losing money, I'm not able to find a right supplier, we'll have to let it go, but we'll consider it later. So this is a good first step in understanding whether to go ahead with something, whether it's worth it to put in that time and effort. So we know our product, we know our company. What's next? Let's also know our sector. It's important, right? So, and the first thing to, when you think about sector is to do a value chain analysis. Now, we hear the word value chain, global value chains a lot when we talk about trade. What does it actually mean? So value chain basically shows you each and every step that goes from the production to the delivery of the product. So from A to Z. So, when we think about global value chains, what it actually means is that these processes are taking place in more than one country. So truly making it a global product. So in terms of a sectoral analysis, it's very important for a company to map each and every step. And while they do that, a value chain analysis can help you understand what does each step actually mean. What kind of resources go into it, right? How, what kind of costs are involved in each step? Where can you reduce costs? Where can you put more costs? What actually is more aligned with your company's strategy? And what is the ultimate goal here? So you want to make sure you're reducing your costs, you're keeping up with the quality, and you're providing a competitive advantage to your end user. And based on this, an SME, an organization can understand that perhaps, if we look at this example, that I'm spending too many resources on yarn processing, so I need to perhaps cut that down and go to manufacturing, or vice versa. So it really will help you understand where you can put more effort, where you can remove some resources, etc., to save costs and to really optimize your operations and your processes. So we know our product, we know our company, we know our sector. What is left? What do we need to know? Any guesses? Market, right? Product, sector, company, but now, okay, if we want to go to a new market, we need to know what it actually entails. So a few things to consider about market size, market growth, market trends. These are all interrelated. So an SME, it's your responsibility to understand that you are understanding the market where you're going to. Because, for instance, for SMEs, they also need to understand, they need to look at the big picture. Even though the products are being bought by clients, the countries that they are based in set the rules. So it's very important to provide some resources and time to know about these countries and the regulations. Starting with the political environment, the regulatory environment, right? As was mentioned, in terms of rules, policies, what works for your product, what does not. The economic environment. The socio-cultural environment, so you not unintentionally hurt some sentiments and your product might not be useful. What is the technological environment, and some other factors to consider, perhaps safety, topography, climate, etc. So these 6 pillars are the first step of understanding your market. Now you must be thinking that, maybe we don't even know what the market is, right? So how do we actually find the market, which is one of the biggest challenges faced by SMEs. And for that, we have some tools that have been developed by ITC. These are available as UN public goods, so please make sure that you're using this and sharing this with other SMEs who might need this information. So we have this tool called the trade map. So for instance, if this SME is producing mangoes, they can go to this tool and understand what is the level of global market demand for this product, Who are the fastest growing markets for mangoes in the world right now? What are the countries importing them? What are the main countries exporting? Which companies import the products in any given market? And also identifying the best market for them to begin their exporting journey. So these are very, very important tools. They're updated on a regular basis to make sure they're compliant with key market trends. So make sure that you do log in to SheTrades.com where you can access all of these tools for free. And these, for the SME producing mango, they can actually go and find the market which makes the most sense for them. So now they know their markets, but it's also important to know your customers. So you know the country, but does it have customers that would actually like mango? So some key points to verify for that. Where do your customers actually live? What is their profile? What influences their purchasing decisions? To understand a bit of demographics. So what is the age? What is the gender? How often will they actually purchase these products? Where, when, and how much will they buy? And what are the preferences and how often they change? So, while you are also getting to know your market, it's important to do scoping studies, research on the customers, and to understand all of these factors because they will actually ensure you have a sustained return to your products. So markets and customers go together. So make sure as an SME, especially women-owned SME, you are researching and doing your due diligence on all of these pillars. Perfect. So we covered the 4 pillars of beginning your exporting journey: your product, your company, your sector, and your markets and customers. There are a few more things that are important to consider, which come under export rules. So number 1 are international standards. So almost all countries, they set a few documents, they have regulations to make sure that your products are compliant with national security, with safety, with health standards, etc. So it's very important to do research and due diligence on these standards and to communicate that with the countries, but also to gain the trust of the buyers that you'll be interacting with. So it makes them understand that you actually care about their health, you are making a product that is compliant with standards, and they will continue to buy with you again. So it's important to really devote some time and energy to understand these international standards. Number 2, the rules of origin. Again, a very, very important and often looked upon aspect of international trade. And this is something that is covered in free trade agreements as well. So rules of origin basically, look at the country where the product is actually manufactured and not where the product was perhaps shipped from. So to really looking at the nationality of the product. Example here could be, for instance, right now we launched the Greater Arab Free Trade Agreement, which covers the Gulf countries. So as an SME based in the country, you need to make sure that your product perhaps complies with the rules of origin of this agreement, because how it will help you is to gain benefits from reduced tariffs, reduced custom duties, reduced duties in general, and reduce speculation on your product as well. So make sure that you are taking stock of all the trade agreements that are applied to your product. You are aware of rules of origin. And in case, you can get a certificate of origin proving that your product is compliant, that will be essential to make sure you can take advantage from free trade agreements. And a work similar we're doing in Zimbabwe as well under AFCFTA to help women understand this and also understand where they can get these certificates of origin. So we have standards, rules of origin, and last and often, overlooked aspect again is intellectual property. So this is, what is IP? It basically means the production of your innovation, of your creativity. These are regulated by an international UN agency called the World Intellectual Property Organization. But why is IP so important? And we'll take an example. Anna knows this as well. We worked with a woman entrepreneur in Zambia who's a very popular fashion designer. She has regular customers in the country. And during the discussions, she told us that, she went to on Instagram one day and she saw a popular designer using the same product that she created. And she could not do anything because the product was actually not IP protected. So IP regulations are very important for SMEs and women-owned SMEs. Please make sure that you're aware of your rights. Please make sure you know how to apply for these IPs, because how it will help you, it will make sure that your technology, your product is not replicated in the exporting countries. So you can make sure that you continue to supply and you continue to ensure a demand. And at the same time, you also need to be aware that you're not encroaching upon someone else's IP, right? Because that will also lead to regulations and measures against you. So make sure that, after you understand all the pillars, you are taking stock of international standards, rules of origin, and intellectual property regulations. And I think we're almost nearing the end. What are some other elements of international trade? Very important to consider, especially for products, are the transport processes, right? How are you actually going to deliver those products? And there are many different ways for that. We have road, which is usually the most flexible product and also the most often used. We have rail, which is less flexible, but also again, perhaps one of the safest modes of transport as well. We have air, which is the most expensive but the fastest. And then we have multimodal, which basically means that your delivery process involves one of the few or perhaps all of the different modes of transport. So while making sure that you identify the right transport process, there are different factors that need to play. For instance, if you are producing frozen fish, for instance, or frozen veggies, that transport process requires cold chain solutions, right? Or perhaps shipping, because these are perishable products. But if you're producing, say, dresses or clothes for babies, that can be more flexible because there's less risk of products being destroyed, and perhaps you can be flexible with the transit time as well. So you need to make sure of the nature of your product, what are the risk elements, what is the transit time that you need, what is the cost that goes into all of it, how much of a loss are you willing to take. So weigh the pros and cons, and you can use the SWOT analysis for this as well. And based on that, you can come up with the right transport modality for your product. Some other, logistics providers act as integrators nowadays. So we're working with UPS, but we also work with DHL very closely. So these organizations provide end-to-end logistics solutions. So you can also work with them to make sure they take care of all your needs, starting from A to Z. So the transport process, and followed by that, packaging. Again, very, very important, because this makes sure that, your product is protected. And in terms of labeling, so where the product is actually going, in case you need to comply with any standards or any regulations set up by the countries. And this also helps, the countries and clients be informed of what the package actually contains, right? And it's very important to make sure that you have the right packaging and labeling, because if you do not, a lot of times these packages can actually be either seized or destroyed or returned, which will just increase your time and money. So again, a very, very important tool to consider. And you can also get support for this by using integrators like UPS and DHL, who can understand that, okay, if you're exporting a product to UAE, this is the labeling and packaging requirements that you need to consider, so to make sure that your product is not returned. And last but not the least, how are you actually getting paid? Right? So there are different modalities for that, starting with getting cash in advance, which is very, perhaps the most popular method used by SMEs, because they need that money to actually produce the product. This is also the one that comes with the least risks, but there are other opportunities and other options here as well, such as letters of credit that the importer can issue against their bank and share with the SME, or an open account. So for instance, they will only get money after the order has been received by the buyer. So depending on your risk appetite, depending on your business model, you can consider the best payment modality for you as well. Oh, I think it's not working. Sorry. We just have one slide left, so you can go to the last one.
No.
I think while we go to the last slide, perhaps I can start talking about it as well. I think so, today we of course, we could not go really deep into each of these topics, but these are very important pillars to consider for any SME who's looking to export, particularly for women-owned and led SMEs who often do not understand where to begin. But something very important to consider is that the trade dynamic has changed, the environment has changed post-COVID. At ITC, what we say that is the world is dealing with 4 Cs. So we have COVID, we have cost of living, we have conflict and climate change. So the market is very precarious, and this is and here it's very important for SMEs to work across 4 pillars. Perfect, right on time. So starting with resilience. What COVID taught us is that small, and medium-sized enterprises, especially those owned by women, were not prepared for any crisis, for any black swan event. A lot of them, unfortunately, had to shut down their operations. So if COVID has taught us anything, is that we need to be resilient. We need to make sure that we are, we have a contingency and a business continuity plan, and we are prepared for everything else that's about to come. Not to be depressing, but to make sure we are prepared for something that's coming. At SheTrades, we have developed a few resources. So we have the crisis management toolkit, which gives you templates to really come up with this business continuity plan. But we have also just launched an e-learning course called Resilience in a Box, which I highly encourage all of you to refer to and share that with your networks of SMEs, so they really understand, the different hazards, the different risks that are being posed to their business, and they take stock of all the resources and assets they have, and come up with a plan of action to ensure business continuity. So that's number one. Number two, it's also very important for SMEs to be more inclusive. The ESG markers, environment, social governance are influencing a lot of trade and investment decisions. So it really helps for SMEs to build global trust and credibility by demonstrating that they have inclusive business operations and practices. Some of the examples that perhaps they don't encourage child labor, they are complying with global standards, mandatory standards, they are protecting the environment, etc. So again, a very important pillar to consider. The third one is sustainability. We're at the brink of a green transition, and it's very important for SMEs and women to not only be spectators, but be actually agents of change, to actually lead this green transition. So it's very important to take stock of your carbon footprint, to understand how can you reduce emissions from your products and processes, and overall be a more sustainable business, because this also helps you comply with a lot of standards and earn the trust of consumers who are becoming more and more aware and conscious of their choices. And last but not the least, digitalization. With COVID, we saw in 2021, actually, the infrastructure spent on the digital infrastructure spend was approximately $2 trillion US. And it's just supposed to grow at the rate of perhaps 20% every year till 2026. So digitalization is very important. We need to digitize to thrive. It not only means e-commerce, but making sure that you are incorporating, perhaps social media marketing. You are taking stock of all the digital tools and technologies that are applicable to your business. We are also living in the era of AI. We are working with ChatGPT now, which can be a game changer and can also be used for your businesses. So for SMEs, they really need to understand how they can digitize their operations, but also access new markets using e-commerce. So these 4 pillars will really ensure that SMEs are working towards the future, they stay relevant, and they can take advantage of all the new market opportunities and trends that emerge. And I think this is it from our end. Thank you so much, everyone. I think Anna would like to say something as well. Okay.
Snapshot of a workshop that normally we deliver in details at the country level with many case studies and with the SMEs. And we represent the International Trade Center, which is a joint agency of the United Nations and of the World Trade Organization. We are based in Switzerland, but we have projects and operations in more than 100 countries.
Yes, so again, thank you so much, everyone. If you could just use your phones to scan this QR code. We have a very quick form to just understand your feedback to this training. If you really, if you think this topic was useful for you and your networks, please let us know. And any other topics that you would like for us to build trainings on. Thank you. Informed us we have some time. If you have any comments or questions, we are happy to take a few as well. Would you need the mic?
Is there, because, hi, you have mentioned several times, if you go back one slide, maybe. You have mentioned several times that there may be differences between male, female-led enterprises. I know for a fact that's true. But if we take those four areas of interest, where do you see the differences lie more evidently in the four areas between male and female-led startups, SMEs? Thank you.
I would say all four. Starting with resilience, I think we realized that, especially during COVID, since we work a lot with women-owned and led SMEs, a lot of them didn't have a basic idea of how to make their businesses more resilient. So that became, a major topic that we decided to focus on women. In terms of inclusiveness and sustainability, based on a lot of work that we do in different countries, we realized that women, a lot of them actually have very natural and inclusive practices, but they don't know that themselves. They don't have awareness of that, and they don't know how to market that for their products. So there's a gap there that we wanted to bridge as well and work on. And digitalization as well is a huge, for what we think is actually, it really levels the playing field for men and women, but there's a huge gap in terms of access to digital infrastructure as well. So, there are studies by GSMA that a lot of women don't even have access to a mobile phone, or they don't understand e-banking. So there's a knowledge gap and there's an access gap that needs to be filled, and that is something that is more exacerbated for women based on our work and research. So I'm sorry, there's no one answer according to me. I would say all four, unfortunately, affect women more. But if Anna?
I would just say that under inclusiveness, one interesting fact is that women-led business, they tend to employ more women than male-led business as well. Of course, that they, what we see a lot of what they do, they have this feeling of giving back to the community, and this is not only in cash and money, returns out of the income that they get, but we do a lot of them then coming up with mentoring programs to, once they get the support, they will get then startups to give back and to train them on. We have many of these coaches and mentoring programs that they are very active to ensure that others come as well, especially minorities and women. So they empower each other, which is quite interesting. And then on the digitalization, I don't know if you heard, but the American government and VP of Vice President Kamala Harris has just launched in Africa a new digital accelerator for women and girls. Have you heard of it? It's giant. It's going to be in the millions of dollars for many countries in Africa. So many of the UN agencies, business support organizations, ministries are now starting to think about what to do, because we know that there are fewer women than men connected to internet even. It's about 250 million fewer women than men in the world connected. We're talking about a country like Brazil being completely off, disconnected. So it's a big digital gender divide. In terms of inclusiveness, they are doing well without knowing, as Kriti said. And in terms of resilience, it's linked a lot to the fact that they tend to run smaller businesses, right? With less access to information as well. So when there's a crisis shock, they're the first ones that probably go bankrupt. So I think this is, perhaps where most.
If I can just make another quick note, you might see a paper perhaps floating around with registration information. We'd really like to know where you're joining us from. If you could let us know your name and organization. Let me find where that paper is and I can share that again.
ITC, how to help the female entrepreneurs to grow, to extend their business globally. Thanks.
And may we know where you're joining us from? Can we have your name as well?
Yes, my name is Alan Liu. Actually, I work for Wall Street Banks, and then now I started a company in a biotech pharmaceutical, which is focused on the COVID-19 vaccines. The most advanced vaccine in the world. Thanks.
Wonderful. I think we covered some of that, and maybe we can share that with the participants later as well. What we do, ma'am, is we have a very stakeholder ecosystem approach. So we really work across all the actors that are important for women to really take advantage of trade and economic opportunities. So we work a lot on policy making. We have tools and resources, but a lot of expertise to help ministers understand the policies that need to be more strengthened and need to be more gender inclusive. So to really work on that policy environment. At the same time, we work a lot with private sector and capital providers to leverage the resources, make them more gender responsive as well, help women access these corporate tenders and to be a part of these supply chains. And at the same time, we work with capital providers to make sure that their offerings cater to the needs of women. So we work, not just with microfinance grants, but also debt, equity, and other financial instruments. Then, of course, a lot of work goes on institutions. So all of these chambers of commerce, export promotion agencies that work with SMEs, but also, perhaps have a focus on women. So to help them, make their operations as well more responsive to the needs of women and strengthen, the way they work and help them identify market opportunities as well that could benefit women. And last but not the least, of course, our bread and butter is the work directly with women entrepreneurs as well. So we have different modalities that we call projects and hubs. I'll take an example of a project, perhaps SheTrades in the Commonwealth, which was funded by the UK government. So the government approached us mentioning that these are their priority countries. So it's Kenya, Nigeria, Bangladesh, and Ghana. And they wanted to make sure that women are boosting their exports, but also creating jobs for women and jobs in general. So how we approach projects is that we firstly do a needs assessment, understand all the needs and opportunities for women, understand the value chains, and then create a targeted action plan with the goal, of course, of enhancing market and investment opportunities.
Thank you very much for your very comprehensive comments, feedback. Actually, I'm not very sure it's appropriate to share more details at the forum, but if not, it's appropriate. I would like to share more, but if not, then we can have some details after the forum. So I'm willing to hear your feedback. Shall I say more?
Of course, we can connect.
Okay, maybe I can start it from my experience. I spent over 10 years with Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch as managing director in investment banking business division. And I also spent 7 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers in Hong Kong for 7 years. So with my experience, when the COVID-19 pandemic was coming, I started to help financing for my ex-alumni from the same school. Actually, the team is actually the admission team, which is a top team in Asia. So we started the COVID-19 vaccine company after almost 3 years. Now we are the top tier R&D company in Asia, and we produced the most effective and with very good protection data the vaccine, but it's a protein with the insect cell platform. So which is actually the insect platform is globally, there was only 4 companies with that technology, which is one is the Sanofi from France, and GSK from UK, and one is from US, and one is from our team. So we are trying to, actually we have really produced the best vaccine globally, but everybody knows that 2 days ago, the WHO has already announced that they will not put the COVID-19 into the most focus virus globally. So, but the thing is, the COVID-19 will be the major virus going forward. It's like the flu. It's like the flu. So we will need to alter the COVID-19 every year, maybe twice a year. So I think it will be the focus, or it will be a major virus going forward. So as our situation is changing, what we can do, right? What we can do more, or what we can do to make the vaccines more popular, or to protect the human being, especially, you know, because I'm one of the co-founder, I'm the company's vice chairman for this company, so I'm a female. So I'm thinking maybe we can leverage your team, your leverage to do something together. But I'm not very sure, you know, this is the reason why I'm here, and I'm just talking and to see if we can get any help. We can from you and your team maybe extend our, you know, technology to the other country, our products to other country as well. So this is something, you know, I'm not very sure if I share the, you know, details here. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you, and I think it's always good to exchange. I will be very straightforward on the comment here. So first question to you is the product already, the vaccine already certified internationally? You have all the patents and so on. How is the regulation certification ongoing? So that would be the first question. Then the second one is we work with the WHO. We are under, of course, the United Nations International Family System, but the WHO has a particular way in organizing and managing their partnerships, especially because it's a very sensitive topic, right, health. And the overall goal of the WHO is to achieve public health, universal public health, right? So they are still, and since it's a sensitive topic, engagement and with the private sector is still quite in the baby steps, because I think they are figuring out how the private sector and especially health service providers can complement the work that they already do in the universal, health sector, because that is the main goal of the UN, to have universal public health support to all nations, right? So that would be the goal of the WHO. And then they partner with private sector in very specific themes, because they don't want to be binding and at the same time, to be very honest, I would say vulnerable to decisions of the private sector, because health is such a big topic, right? So this would be my first take, and I'll be happy to maybe check with you what would be the private sector partnerships strategy. On our side, our partnerships, I would say, are less complicated, because in the sense, in the health sector, we would work with small businesses at the country level. In Nigeria or Kenya, for example, that will provide health services, and they are already registered in the national system, and we'll provide them with technology, or we'll provide these other types of health services already regulated by the countries, right? In your case, I would need more information, I would say, on details. And again, the WHO is very particular, because their goal is universal health coverage, but they are bringing now the private sector as complementary work, right, for them. But I think we should discuss, follow up this maybe later. Yes, thank you.
In short, Actually, respond to our comments. You know, actually, we have already get the approval from China, and we're working on the WHO approval. And there is a system which is called COVAX, which is, yeah, we should, you know, work on that COVAX system. Well, actually, we're trying on. And maybe we're also talking to UNICEF. So maybe probably we stop here. I can, you know,
I think
talk
once
to
this
you
is
after the forum.
Yes.
Otherwise, I
we'll bore
don't think
maybe
it's
all
appropriate to waste, you know, too much time on this.
So after this happens, then we can work together in the sense of promoting to our networks, ministries and women's business associations. We work a lot with cooperatives on the ground, on coffee sector. In Zambia, we also work with organizations that support minority groups to promote then the initiative together with the WHO in case you passed again. But being at the United Nations, we have to be very careful in promoting private sector services. So we tend to always, if we're working in logistics, you saw what Kriti said, right? We work with UPS, we work with DHL, we work with Maersk, we work with National Post Services, because we need to make sure that we're providing a platform for all different stakeholders to be able to promote. And that's how we ensure this, you know, I would say, fair and transparent promotion of private sector services.
Maybe after the forum, we exchange email, or maybe they conference call something others. Otherwise, I don't think it's appropriate to to spend too much time on this.
All right. Any other comment? Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Michel Fossard. I'm a member of the board of VUSME. It's an NGO called World Union Small Medium Enterprises. And we are located with office or ambassador through 100 countries. For example, in Africa, 24 countries. And mainly we are interested today focus about Africa, and especially for agriculture. And in agriculture, we think that it's very important working for food security and food sovereignty. And we think that there is a good opportunity through SMEs, especially for transformation of agricultural product. So I want to know what kind of partnership we can develop with your organization, and if in the future we can develop contact with you through different countries. So at the present time we are starting with countries like Benin. We want also to start activities with Togo, Congo, RDC, Uganda, and to see little by little how it's possible to develop the cooperation with cooperative. If eventually cooperative want to develop a transformation unit, and how we can facilitate the development of those activities through the finance. So, for example, on the 8th, I will be a speaker in the afternoon concerning how to improve access to finance for SMEs. So I think that if we can have a little exchange about that today, it will be good.
Thank you. And definitely, I think we would love to understand also better which sectors within these countries we can exchange in a bilateral. But we do, especially in these countries that you mentioned in Benin, in Uganda, DRC, we do have projects, especially funded by the European Union, on the agricultural sector. The name of the project is Business Friendly ACP project. and where we are working especially with agri-products as well. So definitely, if not ourselves, because we do not manage this project. It's a large project that ITC, our organization, has, but I'll be happy to maybe put you in touch with them. And they are doing value chain financing. So they already did the first step of the financial needs assessment. And I think and they just secured new funding from the EU to continue that. So why not? And this is under one of our colleagues' project, which is called Alliances for Action. So they map out all the key partner stakeholders in specific value chains in these countries, and what each one of them, what they are doing, their responsibilities and impact. And then they select who will be the key partners to work as well. But definitely will be happy to tap into your network of 100 different offices or representatives. So thank you, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I think with that we close, right? Kriti would like to say a few words. And on my side, I'd like to thank you so much for participation. It was a different setting for us, but we are very happy to meet you all today.
Thank you, everyone. And if you need to contact us, our details are there. Thank you so much.